Imagine New York during the Great Depression, the golden age of jazz, luxurious cars, wild parties. But behind the facade of prosperity lies terrible poverty and despair. In this shadow, in this dirty underbelly of the American dream, lived one of the most terrifying monsters in the history of criminalistics, a man whose name became synonymous with absolute depravity and madness, Hamilton Howard Albert Fish. He was called the Gray Man, the Moon Maniac, the Brooklyn Vampire, and the Boogeyman. But who was he really? His story is not just a chronicle of crimes, it is a journey into the darkest corners of the human psyche. A journey that begins in 1870 in Washington, D.C. Fish did not grow up in a happy family. His father died early, and his mother, unable to support 6 children, sent little Albert to an orphanage where cruelty reigned. In his own words, "I was beaten mercilessly there, and that's where I started doing the wrong things." He recalled how the teachers practiced sadistic punishments and how, over time, he began to find a morbid, perverse pleasure in this carnage. This orphanage became not just a place of childhood, but a catalyst for his future evil, forming in him a unique combination of sadism and masochism. In adulthood, Fish was a typical gray man, small, thin, with a mustache, resembling a harmless grandfather. He was a painter, had a wife and 6 children, and led an outwardly inconspicuous life. But inside him lived a demon, and this demon was deeply connected with religion. Albert Fish was a fanatic. He took the biblical commandments about pain, punishment, and atonement literally, believing that he could find salvation only through suffering, both his own and that of others. He mutilated himself, killing his body. In particular, X-rays taken after his arrest showed that he had stuck 29 needles into his groin and stomach, which he had carried for years. It was his cross, his way of atoning. But his demonic need demanded more. It demanded victims. Fish's proven crimes cover the period from 1924 to 1928, but he himself claimed that his victims numbered about 500 children. His victims were children from poor families, from marginalized areas of New York, who disappeared without a trace. Among the proven cases were 8-year-old Francis McDonald and 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. But the most famous crime, which ultimately led Fish to the electric chair, was the murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd in 1928. Fish, posing as an employer, came to the Budd family on the eve of Memorial Day to supposedly hire their eldest son. Fish was persuasive and polite, as psychopaths often are. He asked permission to take Grace with him to a children's party to buy her a gift. That was the last time she was seen alive. For 6 years, the case remained unsolved. Grace Budd was gone, and so was her kidnapper. New York's best detectives, including William King, investigated, but there were no leads. The police were at a dead end until one day in 1934 when the Budd family received an anonymous letter. It was one of the most horrific documents in the history of criminalistics. It described in gruesome detail how Fish had killed, dismembered, and eaten Grace Budd. It was a cry from his ego, a need for recognition of his criminal skill. It was the only time in history that a serial killer, out of pride, sent the description of the cannibalism that had taken place to the victim's relatives. Detective King identified the sender by the postal code and found the company that sold the stationery used for the letter. Thus, Fish was found and arrested. During the interrogation, Fish confessed to his actions. His indifference was terrifying. He described his crimes in detail, as if they were just a normal job. The doctors who examined him agreed that he was a deranged psychopath. However, the 1935 trial became a battle between psychiatrists. Amid public outrage and disgust, the jury found him guilty and sane. It was an era when society demanded retribution, not analysis. On January 16, 1936, 65-year-old Albert Fish was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing prison. It is said that even as he sat on the chair, his last words were indifferent. "I don't even know why I'm here." His body, with 29 needles inside, was the final proof of his perverted life. The Albert Fish case forever changed American criminalistics, demonstrating that the most terrible monsters can hide behind a mask of innocence, and that true horror often lies in a subtle combination of religious fanaticism, sadism, and unspeakable cruelty. Like this material and subscribe to the channel. It is a great motivation for us to continue working.